Good afternoon. It's time to get acquainted with the ins and outs of the Awg-9 and its related controls. This is a fundamental skill as it will be your main tool during your service as a RIO. The Batumi Airport Authority has kindly allowed us to use this spot to practice using the Awg-9, and the ground crew has disabled the weight on wheels sensor for the radar, allowing us to use it while on the ground. Okay, press spacebar when you're ready to continue. Please switch to the back seat now and press space when you're ready. Let's start by going through the different controls used to operate the Awg-9. The main control is the Hand Control Unit, or HCU. It's located below the TID, which is an acronym for the Touch Input Display. To the left side of the HCU are located 4 mode buttons, selecting what the HCU stick currently controls. These are IRTV, which controls the TCS or television camera set, RDR, or radar, which allows control of the Awg-9 radar for acquisition, DDD cursor allows for a positional fix on the detailed data display, and lastly, TID cursor, which allows control of the cursor on the TID itself. Also located on the HCU panel are the WCS and TCS power switches, and the lamp test button for Awg-9 related indicators. Both power switches have a standby and an on or transmit position. When the WCS switch is set to standby, the system is energized, but the radar will not transmit, and when set to transmit, it will, when airborne. Press spacebar when you have located these controls. The HCU stick itself also contains a couple of controls. The front of the stick has a dual stage trigger. The first detent is called half action, and the second, full action. This trigger is used to enable stick input by selecting half action and then execute a function using full action, which one depending on selected HCU mode. In addition, it also contains an offset button on top and an MRL button on the upper right side. These two will be detailed later on. Lastly, on the left side of the stick is the elevation Brenier control, a thumb wheel used to fine-tune radar elevation within 4 degrees of the set radar elevation. Press spacebar when familiar with these controls. As mentioned previously, half action is used to enable stick input in the selected mode. What to keep in mind when using the stick is that it is an absolute input device. A given deflection of the stick always corresponds to the same location on the selected display or TCS position. Make sure TID cursor is selected as the HCU mode and command and hold half action to practice moving the cursor around on the TID. Full action on the TID selects or hooks a symbol for data readout and input. If a hook is made on an empty location, the TID cursor will be dropped in that location. The dropped cursor can be used as positional input for a waypoint or in combination with the offset button on the HCU stick to move the TID display around. Renewed depression of the offset button without a positional cursor hook will recenter the TID display. When familiar with the operation of the HCU stick and trigger in TID cursor mode, release the trigger and press spacebar to continue. front of the HCU, and below the TID you have the TID display controls. The 8 display buttons control what symbology to display on the TID. Normally these can be left as is. Please refer to the manual for further detail. The range knob controls the set range for the TID, with the selected range corresponding to the total range shown across the display, i.e. the diameter of the display. The TID mode knob sets the main display mode for the TID. Ground stab stabilizes the TID to current ground position, and there it will remain until offset while your aircraft moves about on the screen. This mode can be advantageous with a data link that allows you to see targets behind you as well as those in front of you. All tracks and symbols show true heading and ground speed in this mode, and up on the TID is true north. The AC stab mode stabilizes the TID display to current aircraft position, with the own aircraft symbol on the bottom until offset. It will follow along as the aircraft moves, meaning that up on the TID is current aircraft heading. All tracks and symbols in this mode display relative heading and closure rate to own aircraft, meaning that if you're overtaking a target doing 500 knots while doing 700 knots yourself, it will then indicate it moving towards you at 200 knots. Own aircraft symbol will be shown as stationary on the display. The attack mode is same as AC stab, but adds attack symbology to the TID for selected weapon, or only an artificial horizon if no weapon is selected. TV displays the video feed from the TCS or lantern depending on mounted system and set feed on the lantern controls when present. Feel free to select the different TID modes and ranges, and try removing and adding TID symbology. Please return to AC stab, 100 nautical mile range, and original symbology settings before pressing spacebar to continue. On the TID itself, you have various indicators allowing readout of additional information. The circle on the bottom of the display in aircraft stabilized is your own aircraft's position. The symbol itself is the same in ground stabilized as well. Emanating from this circle are the antenna scan limits set for the Awg-9 radar. These are dashed, indicating 20 nautical miles for each dash and space in between. Again, these will look the same in ground stabilized, but will emanate from wherever on the screen the own aircraft symbol is, and will move with it. On the top edge of the TID are the data readouts, presenting by default the position of the hook symbol. If not already hooked, please hook the own aircraft symbol using the HCU in TID cursor mode. This is also indicated by the readout directly above the TID showing own AC. You should now see own aircraft position on the data readouts. The left edge of the TID shows antenna elevation scan limits in thousands of feet at set TID range, currently 34 and 0. In between those is the current antenna elevation position or elevation center of current antenna scan zone, depending on radar mode. On the opposite side, the closure rate of the hooked target will be shown. Further below these can be seen the current status of the navigational system, in this case IN for INS, in addition to currently selected weapon and number of remaining weapons of that type. That indication is not currently shown. The remaining numbers center right and left down on the TID are data run indicators, indicating that the computer is running when cycling. If all of these numbers freeze, it indicates that the computer is crashed or stopped. When ready, press spacebar to continue. On the left side, we have the CAP, or Computer Address Panel. It's used to select TID hooks, set track information, and select what data to display on the TID data readouts. The keypad on the top is used to select the prefix for the TID data readouts. To select a prefix, press clear and then the desired prefix, the prefix being listed on the button in addition to the number of the button. For further details, consult the manual. If you still have own aircraft hooked, feel free to try different prefixes, but remember to press clear in between them as to not enter any data by mistake. Press spacebar when ready to continue. Left of the cap, we have the sensor control panel, containing Awg-9 radar scan zone controls and TCS controls. The stab switch sets the radar to either ground stabilized mode in the in position or aircraft stabilized mode in the out position. When in ground stabilized mode, the radar will scan relative to the horizon, while in aircraft stabilized mode, the scan will be relative to the aircraft's current attitude. This is only used for pulse search, which we will discuss shortly, as the other modes require ground stabilization. Azimuth control and elevation control controls the location of the center of the antenna scan zone, allowing the RIO to slew it around within the antenna gimbal limits. Azimuth scan sets the antenna scan limits, while the elevation bars sets the number of bars to scan in elevation, with each bar being roughly 2.3 degrees. The VSL switch enables the RIO to select the VSL high or low auto acquisition mode when momentarily pressed to either position. Further details in the relevant pilot tutorial and manual. The slave switch allows the RIO to slave the radar to the TCS line of sight when in radar, and the TCS to the radar line of sight when in TCS. Normally, this is left in TCS to allow visual identification of a radar-tracked target. Feel free to try different scan settings and try moving the scan pattern around using the controls. If you mistakenly enable VSL, set the HCU to the radar mode and select half action and release to drop back to a search mode. Press spacebar when ready to continue. The last control panel relevant to the Awg-9 radar and its operation is the DDD panel itself. DDD is an acronym for Detailed Data Display, and the panel is located above the TID panel and contains the DDD itself in addition to the remaining radar controls. The DDD displays the raw radar image from the Awg-9 radar when transmitting, exact display depending on select radar mode. Above the DDD are 6 controls allowing the RIO to set radar range when in pulse mode, which is then indicated on the range readout below them. The 4 indicator lamps, antenna track, radar on target, jam angle track, and IR on target are used to indicate successful track of a target by the radar in a single target track mode and a visual track by the TCS. To the left side of the range buttons, we have 4 switches. The second from the left is the MLC, or main lobe clutter filter switch, which we will use in a while. In the right bottom corner of the DDD panel, we have the display buttons and the WCS mode buttons. The display buttons originally controlled if DDD would show the radar image or the IR system image, in addition to enabling the IFF interrogation. As the IR system is no longer mounted, the RDR or radar button will always be selected and the IR button non-functional. The remaining button is the IFF button, which enables the IFF display submode and starts an IFF interrogation. The WCS mode buttons select the desired radar mode, which will then light up to indicate selection. The readout below and to the left of these buttons also displays current radar mode and can also show when one of the quick acquisition modes are selected. To the left of the DDD, we have the elevation indicator needles. The RDR pointer displays actual radar antenna elevation and will move with the antenna in the scan pattern. The IRTV-EC pointer displays currently commanded antenna elevation center when in a radar mode, and the elevation of the TCS when the HCU is in the IRTV mode. The rest of the controls on the DDD are further detailed in the manual and will not be touched upon in this tutorial. This concludes this first part. You may exit the mission when done familiarizing yourself with the controls and panels.